A gentle reminder to our participants to mute audio and keep the video off for the session. Good evening. I, Prajakta Adhikari, on behalf of the Institute of Environmental Architecture and Research, warmly welcomes all our participants and our speaker for today. The Institute of Environmental Architecture and Research, which is a Mumbai based educational, research, and training institute with a vision to create a sustainable environment through scientific research, education and training, socio-cultural understanding, community engagement, and awareness. We are a multidisciplinary group of scientists, professionals, and academicians who have joined forces to form this organization, having worked collaboratively for more than 15 years on education, environment consultancy, and awareness. Our mission is Environment First. This is the sixth webinar in the series, which we started during the lockdown period. So far, we have reached out to more than 1,000 participants altogether. Our main objective in this webinar series is to provide educational and research inputs and a scientific and analytical approach to environmental issues. I would now welcome our moderator, Dr. Roshni Yehuda, President of IEAR, to introduce our today's speaker.
Thank you, Prajakta. I will talk a little bit about the subject of today, which is a very interesting subject. And then I'm very happy to also introduce our speaker for today. So, Vastu Shastra is an ancient treatise of India about the construction of buildings. There are a lot of misconceptions about Vastu Shastra, especially in today's context, as there are a lot of practitioners of Vastu Shastra, and there are so many shortcuts that are being promoted, as you can do this or you cannot do that as per Vastu and so on. So not everybody is clear as if whether it is a scientific thing, whether we should follow it or not, and so on and so forth. However, my stand, and I feel this is also the stand that Ranjani started with, is that this treatise is far more intense, is far more contextual, is far more deep than what it is made out to be today. And I think this was the premise with which Ranjani started with in her research. She wanted to find out what is the sort of context of this particular Vastu Shastra, how is it applicable today, whether it is applicable today, how does it compare with the environmental architecture principles. Maybe it was some such principle that guided this treatise at the time when it was made. So I think this was the background in which she started, and of course she is going to explain to you more about it. About Ranjini herself, she has had an excellent, she was an excellent performer throughout her academic career, both in BArch as well as MArch. I know that she was always top of the line, always doing very hard working and intense in her work. And once she decided that she will take up this topic, she worked very hard on it. I think probably I remember one thing about her dissertation is that it was the only dissertation throughout my so many years of heading the Rachna Sansad, the Institute of Environmental Architecture, that we had a thesis of 350 pages, So that goes to show that she did a lot of reading. She went through a lot of literature, and she also did a lot of very detailed analysis. And I think what she is presenting today is just probably a tip of what she has actually done. So I hope that this will generate a lot of questions and interesting analysis. Uh, in a nutshell, if I have to add a little bit more about Ranjani, I would say that right now she is working with the SSA Architects Mumbai, and she's also an IGBC accredited professional with about 8 years of work experience, focusing mainly on residential architecture. With that, I think I will ask Ranjani to start with her topic of today. Over to you, Ranjani.
First of all, I would really like to thank Roshni ma'am for this wonderful introduction, and welcome one and all to today's session. Just give me a minute while I just share the screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
I would like to first thank my guide, architect Nidhi Gupta, Dr. Roshni Udhyawar, and Dr. Shashidhar Kashyap for giving me timely guidance and helping me complete my dissertation work in the in the specified time. Today, I'll be talking about Vastu Shastra in context. Vastu is an ocean, and I think I have covered a very small portion of it through my study. But I think the most important part, which I would like to emphasize and explain more here, is the methodology that I adopted to do this. And I think that is just the starting point where many people can use it further, or go in the same lines and do a lot more research to it. To talk about the origin, basically, there are four Vedas, that is the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda. Sthapatya Veda, which is an Upaveda of Atharva Veda, is basically dealing with Vastu science, that is the building science. In Vastu Shastra, the common terminology is used is owner. The owner is called Yajamana, the advisor, the Acharya, the master builder, the Sthapati. And as architects, we are actually the Sthapatis. These were few of the texts that were referred for the dissertation purpose. There are many more, and even within the text, specified points were referred, and only those points were taken ahead and dealt with in detail. I would just like to give a broad overview of the topics that I would cover today. First one being the introduction, which would deal with how the topic was derived, the aims and objectives, and how was the entire study structured. Second being the methodology. How was the study, how was the methodology adopted? Parameters considered. Detailed explanation of one of the parameters would be given. Findings and discussions, conclusion, and scope for further research. Let us begin with the introduction. The question which basically led me to take this topic was, for example, like it is visible on the screen, consider scenario 1. Now, if this is the building under consideration, and when you look at Vastu Shastra, it basically talks about the Pancha Mahabhutas, which is the 5 elements of nature, being earth, water, fire, air, and space. Now, one thing in common to all these 5 elements are that all of these are physical elements. They are all physically present. They affect you because of their physical presence. Now, look at scenario 2. When you look at both the scenarios now, they both look same, and hence if we have to jot down the principles or design principles for these two scenarios, it is going to be the same. But what if there is a building here? What if there is one more building here? So don't you think that when you have physical obstruction to your own building under consideration, and the Pancha Mahabhutas themselves being physical elements, there needs to be consideration of your context, of your surroundings. Even in Vastu, it is said that you live in a smaller cosmos. You are surrounded by a larger cosmos around you and an even larger cosmos around. So it is very important that you consider your microclimate or your surroundings and the macroclimate. Now, this was something which was from my perspective as an architect and as a student of environmental architecture. But what about the laymen? For the people whom we design our buildings, they are basically in this dilemma. They are stuck between the architects and the Vastu Pandit in choosing a suitable dwelling for themselves. Vastu is currently being used as a tool to analyze the role of a building in the health and fortune of its inhabitants. I am not sure about the fortunes definitely, but yes, health is an important factor, and buildings or a built space definitely plays a very important role in the health of an individual. Now, if one has to break Vastu Shastra, Vas means to dwell and Vastu means dwelling. So Vastu Shastra is basically a treatise on dwelling. It is science of architecture. So it is very clear that it has a scientific basis. There are logics to why certain things are specified. And the more important point is to understand the logic rather than just copy pasting it and using it as a formula for all the buildings similarly, in a similar fashion. Hence, the intent of the study was to analyze the principles of Vastu Shastra parallel to the principles of environmental architecture. Now, again, this idea came up and it was important for me. I mean, it's important for me to explain this was at same time around which I had enrolled myself into post-graduation also. So that was a time when I was really getting into the details or calculations of daylighting, heat gain, ventilation, and so on. So that's when I thought that these two things, somewhere or the other, speak similar things. So hence, I thought that I would analyze both the things parallelly, independently, and understand the correlation between them. This was how the aim of the topic itself was derived, was to analyze the principles of Vastu Shastra in current context and examine its applicability in the design of residential buildings in warm and humid climate. I would want to go about this presentation in the similar fashion or in the similar order in which the dissertation was done, so that I'm able to do justice to explain the methodology to all of you all. So the three objectives were derived, and on the right hand side, you can see that based on these three objectives, the entire study was structured. First objective being obviously reading enormous amount of literature pertaining to Vastu Shastra and environmental architecture. Second objective was that I took up a case study of a bungalow and an apartment. Now, bungalow again has a different quality. It has the benefit of orientation, or it has an exposure from all the sides. But if we have to look at an apartment in today's context, then you don't have the opportunity to have your orientation in all the directions. Hence, two different case studies were taken up. And based on whatever study was done, these cases were analyzed, and then it was seen whether they correlate or they do not correlate to each other. There are two specific operational definitions which I would like to mention here, one being current context. Current context here was basically in reference to the context of time and space. In space, we are actually talking about physical features that are surrounding your considered apartment or building, or whichever, I mean, for which you are dealing with your principles. And time, I think time is a very important factor. One is that we were looking at an era in which Vastu Shastra originated, that was thousands of years ago, versus the era in which I was actually doing my dissertation, which was 2015-16. But now, if we look at 2020, we are again in a different time frame. There are different considerations. So basically, context is very important to apply any science to any building construction. Environmental architecture was basically restricted to the climate of Mumbai, which is warm and humid climate, and it dealt with physical features and site features such as orientation, surroundings, and natural features on site. There were certain delimitations which were considered. One was that only the climate type of Mumbai was considered. Both the buildings under consideration were non-conditioned, and prescriptive methodology was adopted. These were specific to the environmental architecture principles. Again, Vastu Shastra was limited to residential buildings only, and it only covered specific points that we will be looking at in the coming up slides. That was all about the introduction. Now I would like to go to the methodology. So this was basically an exploratory research to analyze the correlation between Vastu Shastra principles and environmental architecture principles. I started with conceptualization of the research problem, which I have explained previously, and then understanding the applicability of Vastu Shastra in residential buildings. This was done through literature review pertaining to Vastu principles and environmental architecture principles. Now, again, while doing it was the site features, and the other was the building features. Again, in case of Vastu Shastra, there was specified literature that was reviewed, which is specified here. Based on the review of literature, two independent rating scales were formulated, one for Vastu Shastra and the other for environmental architecture principles. Two cases of bungalow and residential building were taken into consideration, and then based on the rating scale that was formulated, these two cases were analyzed and inferences were drawn based on the scores obtained. Now the whole methodology was based on the rating scale system, because to understand any parameter or the authenticity of it, one needs to deal with figures. And to understand that, we adopted this principle of rating scale, scoring things, and then trying to understand the comparability with respect to the scores obtained. Again, optimization of environmental architecture scores were considered, and then its effect on Vastu scores were again looked at, and then further inferences were drawn. So this was a holistic picture of the methodology that was used to complete the dissertation. In case of environmental architecture principles, the two broad parameters being site and building parameters. And on the right hand side, you could see the base data which was used, that was the weather data, and rating systems were IGBC, Griha, and eco housing. Now, within these parameters, for building parameters, again, there were two broad divisions, that was building orientation and zoning of spaces. Now, what does zoning of space mean? Zoning of space means within an apartment, location of your living room, bedroom, kitchen, etc. To understand that, basically, three parameters were looked at. One was heat gain, ventilation, and daylighting. This is very specific to environmental architecture score chart, where the marks to be given to a living room or a bedroom was to be obtained by calculating the heat gain, ventilation, and daylighting. So to sum it up, in short, both the stream of science, that is Vastu Shastra and environmental architecture, were parallelly looked at for two broad parameters of site and building, and the subtopics that are mentioned below them. Certain delimitations to the rating scale was also specified. I would explain the first one being that both the subjects were looked at independently, and the rating scales were developed independently without interfering into each other. The analysis or correlation was done post the case studies were analyzed. Thus, the intent was to assess the score obtained individually for both the rating scales and then draw conclusions from it. Now what you see on the screen is the rating scale for site parameters. I have just given a broad overview of all the points to sum it up. When you go from dark black to white, it is going from 100% to 0%. The left hand side here is basically the Vastu Shastra principles, and on the right hand side you have your environmental architecture principles. The broader points were plot shape, proportion, orientation, open spaces and vegetation, orientation of roads and site surroundings, that was scored in both the cases. Now, this was a rating scale that was developed for building parameters. Similarly, on the left-hand side, you have your Vastu principles. On the right, you have your environmental architecture. And for environmental architecture principle, for example, if you have to score one room, for example, say your living room, it had to be scored for heat gains, daylight, and ventilation, all of the three together. And the average score was then compared with the Vastu Shastra score of the living room. I would now like to explain one of the parameters of heat gain, that is solar radiation and temperature, and how did I go about making a score chart for that parameter. So solar radiation and temperature, being one of the Pancha Mahabhutas as per Vastu Shastra principles, is a very important parameter to define occupant comfort. So I had to use a methodology in such a manner that somewhere it should be comparable to my Vastu Shastra rating scale. Now, when I look at heat gain, I can easily get values for heat gain via conduction, convection, and radiation in watts per meter square. But there were three disadvantages associated with it. One being that there is no established rating system which says that this much quantity of heat gain is better than that. Second being that heat gain through windows would become the sole parameter when I look at conduction, convection, and radiation. And third being that the material of the envelope will come into picture, whereas in the rating scale of Vastu Shastra, there was no material considered for the purpose of this dissertation. Hence, I had to find out a method by which only my facade exposure would be scored based on the temperature and based on the hourly total solar radiation incident on that facade. I think let me explain that step by step. So first is that On the left, you can see the hourly temperature data. On the first column gives you the time of the day. The next second column gives you the temperature data. Now, what was done was that these temperature data was categorized into three categories of moderate temperature, warm temperature, and hot temperature. To categorize this, a 2-degree increment was taken into consideration and then they were categorized. This was how the temperature data was categorized. Secondly, the radiation data was also categorized into the parallel three categories of moderate radiation, warm radiation, and high radiation with an increment of 211 watts per meter square. Now we have three categories for temperature data and three categories for solar radiation data. Out of these three categories in each, a permutation combination table was established wherein 6 categories were developed and then the scores were given. For example, the first and the best category being moderate temperature and moderate radiation, and the worst being hot temperature and hot radiation. Let me simplify this further by giving you an detailed explanation with all of the data together. On the left hand side, you see a graph where this is the radiation data and this is the temperature data. Now, since we are taking radiation into consideration, the time span that we will be looking at will be 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So on the right hand side, I'll just explain it column wise, where the first column is your temperature data, the second column, first column is your time, second column is your temperature data, the third column was the category which was considered. Again, the fourth column is total solar radiation incident at that point of time, the category of it, and the next column says the combination that this is moderate temperature and moderate radiation, and hence it scores the highest, that is 5 out of 5. Now, this is an example of the north facade. Similarly, we have 7 more facades. So similar charts were made for 7 facades, and then a cumulative chart was derived, which is this that you can see, where the left-hand side is the time, and on the top first row is your facade orientation, which is north, south, east, west, and so on. The figures that you see on the chart is the solar radiation in watts per meter square, and the darkest block is your highest score and the whitest block is your lowest score. And this was an overall summation of the solar chart developed to analyze the solar radiation and temperature parameter for heat gain. Now, let us take an example and see how was a living room given marks for its orientation. So say that this is your flat. You have your living room, kitchen, bath, and bedroom, and this is where your north is. So the first step to be taken into consideration was the occupancy hours. Now, this was a most important point which I would like to highlight, that any room that was scored was first defined with respect to its occupancy hours, because it is very essential that you understand for the people who are designing, how are they going to use the space, at what time of the day are they going to use the space. The second is that the highest radiation value corresponding to the occupancy hours should be selected. In this particular case, it is 213 watts per meter square at 7 o'clock in the morning. And then you come to the score, which is 5 on 5, and that is the highest score which this living room for northern orientation has gained. Again, I would like to specify that in this case, for the living room, north was assessed because all other walls were internal walls or was not directly exposed or was not an external facade. So I hope I have explained this with a little bit of clarity to everyone. Similarly, for the entire flat in Vastu and environmental architecture principles, each room was given marks or each zone was scored with respect to what the Vastu principles said. And the parallel scores for environmental architecture parameter with respect to heat gain, where heat gain had again 3 subtopics. One is your solar radiation and temperature, which was explained just a while ago, your window wall ratio and shading percentage of window, daylighting, that is glazing factor and effective aperture, and ventilation, that is fresh air ventilation, window orientation as per predominant wind condition and cross ventilation. With these points, each room was individually given marks and then an average score was taken. So this is how broadly, I have tried to explain how the case studies taken up were given marks with respect to Vastu and with respect to environmental architecture principles. So the case studies were, this was a bungalow plot and this was the building that was taken up. This was the plan for the bungalow. Ground plus 2 floors were analyzed. And for the building, basically 4 flats and 4 different orientations were taken up to understand the effect of different orientations. Now moving on to findings and discussions. To develop a matrix which could indicate the comparability of parameters between Vastu Shastra and environmental architecture, 3 categories were established. One being directly comparable, second being non-comparable but have related considerations, and third being independent parameter without any related considerations. So to sum it up, for site parameters, it was seen that it was appropriate to rate the site as a whole for a bungalow, but for a flat system, it was more important to analyze it flat-wise. Precisely the reason being that in case of a bungalow, you have the opportunity to have your open spaces or orientation from various sides, or at least 4 sides or at least 3 sides. But if you look at a flat scenario today or an apartment case today, then you will have predominantly either 1 orientation or probably max to max 2. Hence, it is essential that you understand how to use these concepts specific to your apartment or specific to the apartment which you are designing. Moving on to the findings and discussions of building parameters. Now, when we look at these figures, there is a huge difference in the range of scores. So environmental architecture, the scores range from 62% to 73%, whereas in Vastu Shastra, the scores ranged from 30% to 81%. So this was a graph wherein all the rooms were put together. And on the left-hand side, you see the Vastu score for 1 flat, and on the right-hand side, environmental score for 1 flat. But from this, it was understood that taking up an average would not be a very great idea to move ahead, and we would have to analyze each parameters and then see which are directly comparable and then further take them ahead for analysis. So that was what was done. The parameters were listed down, and the ones which were directly comparable, that is solar radiation and temperature, percentage window shaded at peak time, and window orientation, were taken up further for analysis. The major inference that was drawn from this analysis was that the method adopted for analysis in Vastu Shastra was zone specific, and in case of environmental architecture, it was based on facade exposed. Now, what do I mean by this? Say you have a flat, your apartment into consideration. An example you have to see, or you have to rate what is it that is situated in the north zone and how does your apartment fare in this. So typically what is done today is that a rectangle is made, or your flat is surrounded by a rectangular thing, and then you divide it into 8 parts, and then for your zone specific approach, you say, okay, this is my north zone. So the one which is highlighted here is your north zone. And then you say that, okay, in the north zone, I have my kitchen and my bath, and this is not appropriate, and so on. But is that the actual way which will really help you in understanding it? Now, when you look at the facade exposure and you look at your orientations, then this entire facade, be it your living room, be it your kitchen, be it your bathing area, be it your bedroom, everything has got a northern exposure. So there is this question, is it wise to go with your zone specific approach, or is it wise to understand which facade gets the exposure? Again, in this case, I would like to stress on this point that when you're dealing with the Pancha Mahabhutas, or when you're dealing with Vastu elements, they all talk about physical elements. They talk about sunlight, wind. Now, if that is the case, then that facade or that skin which separates the occupant from these elements, or which is in interaction with these physical elements, that facade has to be into consideration. So in this case, you have only one orientation and one facade which is exposed to your external, and that's how your approach towards looking at your heat gain should also be. Moving ahead with this inference, when I looked at the scores for living room, it was seen that the best case as per Vastu was also the best case as per environmental architecture. When you look at this highlighted rectangle, the only difference being that the zone and the north, and the facade exposed, both were north, and hence it made sense and it correlated with each other. There can be several occasions where if you look at the zone specific approach, the exposure of facade will not be the same. I would get on to that in the next few slides. But the major inference that was drawn was irrespective of the zone as per Vastu, the facade must get the necessary orientation. Similarly, for kitchen, I could clearly see that activity specific principles were used in Vastu Shastra, where it said that okay, kitchen should get the southeastern exposure because your cooking needs daylight. Again, it was concluded that Vastu Shastra holds true to the current context of kitchen, provided the facade gets the necessary orientation. For example, when you are talking about southeast zone, your south and the eastern facade must get that exposure. Moving on to the next, master bedroom. Similar inferences of exposures of facade. Again, here I would like to emphasize on the point that for every room or every zone, the occupancy considered was defined, and the nature of usage of the room was established, and based on that, analysis was done. Similarly, for children's bedroom, again, Vastu Shastra says that you should have an eastern or a western orientation. Clearly, that when you have a child studying, you need to understand that there is sufficient daylight as well as there is not much heat gain. The rooms have to be comfortable. So all these aspects were clearly visible from these scores. To sum up the discussions for findings and in bedroom case, we again have the solar chart that was developed. Now, when you look at the radiation values of the eastern facade in the early morning hours, and you look at the radiation values of the western facade in the late afternoon hours, they are same. But the major difference is that eastern facade scores well because in the morning hours, though your radiation values are higher, your ambient temperatures are lower. This automatically ensures that you have good daylight, but your heat gain is less. At the same time, in your western facade, your radiation value is also higher. At the same time, the ambient temperature also goes very high. Hence, it's a clear indication that when you're using your eastern facade at the day, during your daytime activities, it is best suited for it. And if we go further, we can see that in Vastu Shastra, south, southwest, and west were predominantly used for bedrooms. And when we look at the radiation values at west, southwest, and northwest, we can see again that it scores very badly. Hence, any activity at that point of time in these zones would be very uncomfortable for any occupant. If you consider Mumbai, for example, and you look at northwest, northwest is also a predominant wind direction. So the whole logic behind stressing upon this point is that if you're looking at locating bedrooms in west and southwest, it's a good idea because it becomes like a buffer space, and all your other activities of living and kitchen can go in the remaining exposures. But if you look at today's situation, for example, when everyone is working from home, your bedroom is being used as your office, your living room is being used as your office, and we don't know what is the situation going to be in the next 2-3 years. And given this scenario, if one has to design, we have to again look at the optimum solution. So if we have to have a Western orientation and we have no option, our elevational projections or shading devices should be designed in such a manner that it becomes comfortable enough for the occupants to use it. And that is what even Vastu Shastra precisely is saying, or it is giving us a very zone specific, daytime activity specific approach. To sum it up, when we put down all 8 orientations in one line, as per Vastu Shastra, from north, northeast, and east, was considered very sacred, and all your living areas and daytime activities were given them. Southeast for kitchen, and all the below zones of south, southwest, and northwest were assigned for bedroom. So you can clearly see a daily scheduled based zoning as per Vastu Shastra also. And this is the same concept which even environmental architecture principles talk about. But again, one more point which is very important is that or do we have the opportunity of having all of these orientation in our apartment? Are we getting the benefits of all of these orientation? If yes, then great. We can have all of these varied zoning and take advantage of the daylight accordingly or the sunlight accordingly. But if in today's context we look at Mumbai as a city and we look at apartments having singular orientation, we need to apply it based on that. So in case of flats having single orientation, the above logic doesn't hold true because you do not have so many orientations in the first place. So the major point being that the methodology adopted to apply Vastu Shastra principles must be based on the suggested exposed facades and not zones. So let us take case 1. Now in case 1, you see this rectangle. Suppose that that is your apartment. And when I say that a room is south in the southeast zone, so when we are looking at a zone specific thing, the one which is highlighted is your southeast. But the one which is highlighted in orange is basically your facade exposure, that is the wall on the external face of the building, which is the east and the south. Now, let us take case 2. In this case, you have a diagonal plot. So your southeast is somewhere here, which is highlighted in teal, but your facade exposure is northeast and southeast. So when you talk about southeast zone, doesn't necessarily mean that your eastern and southern facades are getting exposed. If your plot orientation changes, then your facade exposure also changes. Now, if you look at case 3, there is a building which is adjoining your building, then your southeastern exposure also goes away and only northeastern exposure is available. Thus, this room which is highlighted will have the benefits or the disadvantages of northeastern exposure, but still we are looking at something, still if we look at the southeast zone, then the whole point will not make sense. It was also inferred by Tarkhedkar in his book that diagonal plots have only 40% Vastu Shastra principles applicable. But having looked at this statement, we need to understand why is it said so. And I think this is one of the primary reasons why once your plot becomes diagonal or once your building becomes diagonal, your exposure changes and thus your way to approach it should also change. Surroundings play a major role in affecting the quantity and quality of solar radiation. Again, in Vastu era, we were not looking at high-rise buildings, but in today's context, we are looking at high rises. So once you go higher, your solar radiation, the quality, the quantity, everything changes. Your wind forces become higher. So one cannot even say that principles which are applicable to your first floor apartment and the same apartment when we are looking at on the 21st floor would be the same. No, they would not, they would differ. And we have to design accordingly. The occupancy pattern of the user becomes very essential. Now, this is one of the most important points, that every house will have a specific design principle. You cannot use any science or any logic as a rule book and say that it has to be copy pasted to all the houses, because it has to be user specific. As architects, we have to be very sensitive to the fact that people who are going to use the house, we need to understand their nature, the way they are going to use the house, the time of the day when they will use the house, and accordingly design it. The window wall ratio and shading devices must be proportionately designed. So in case of an apartment system, as explained earlier, when we do not have the option of various orientation, or where we do not have the option of even having a cross ventilation, we need to understand that shading devices, window wall ratios play major role to balance daylight and heat gain. It was also found that the comparability of Vastu Shastra and environmental architecture increases where there is more than one orientation available. That was seen in case of a bungalow, and that was precisely why 2 different case studies were taken to understand how important it is to have multiple orientations versus single orientation. And I think even in today's context, it has become very clear. People have understood the value of wind, ventilation. They have understood the value of how important sunlight is for having a healthy built space and to avoid health problems and giving a healthy space design for its occupants. To conclude, I think the picture says it all, that even if your spaces or well is as per Vastu doesn't mean that you will not drown. It depends on how you use it. It depends on how you have placed it and how you use it, basically. It was found that Vastu Shastra principles and environmental architecture principles completely relate to each other, but the applicability of Vastu principles must be reconsidered based on the concept of the structure context of the structure under consideration, and most importantly, the occupancy pattern of the user. Understanding the user is very important, and that is what makes every house different from the other house. The most important inference being the methodology adopted to apply Vastu Shastra principles must be based on the suggested exposed facades and not zones. We move on to further research. There is a lot of scope for further research. What I have touched upon was minuscule, it was just a very small thing, but since it was limited with respect to the time, it was limited only to the parameters that were considered in the rating scale. Further research could include materials used in the Vastu Shastra era, and then now it could be compared with the current materials. The rating scale could be further elaborated. A simulation-based approach could also be implemented, and yes, the validation of the rating scale, which is yet to be done, is important. These were few of the references that were used to understand both the principles. I would like to sum it up that I started with this, where the people for whom we are designing are in this dilemma, but I think there is this I would like to end up saying that one has to be very specific to the context and one has to be very specific to the user. All apartments and all houses cannot be a result of copy pasting of the concepts, because one has to only take up the concept and logic but apply it specifically to your specific houses. I would like to end with this slide that built space for human habitation should be such that generations of people can occupy it, modify it suiting to the context, yet the built space remains vibrant. And that is what can lead to timeless space design. Thank you. I will.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ranjani. That was a very elaborate talk on Vastu Shastra and environmental architecture principles. I am just waiting for some questions, but in the meantime, I would request you to maybe talk a little bit about, you talked about zoning versus facade exposure. What are the things that are specifically, maybe you can talk about in Vastu Shastra about related to zoning? What is it that it talks about?
So let me just take an example of a living room. For example, in Vastu Shastra, many texts have specified that northern and eastern zone is the best for living room. So when I look at again the zone and the facade exposure point of view, when you have a perfect plot or a perfect orientation of a building where your north, south, and these cardinal directions are perpendicular to each other and exact, then what zone we are talking about is north, and the parallel facade exposure is also north. Hence, when Vastu says that living room is well off in the northern zone, then the conclusion, parallel conclusion for environmental architecture says that northern exposure is good because you have diffuse daylight, you have good, the ambient temperatures are low, and living room, if you see that it is used during your morning hours, then that becomes your best case scenario. But again, when I'm talking about specific to people or how the way they use it. For example, if a living room is not at all used during daytime, just I mean, I'm thinking aloud, and it is used only in the night when you return from your office or something like that, then does it still make sense to follow that northern exposure, or you might as well assign that area to some other room which is used during daytime.
So from what I understand, I think that the principles that are mentioned in Vastu Shastra are very generic, and they have to be adopted. They have to be adapted to the site, and one has to make sense of the what it says, and then only you adopt. You don't just adopt blindly to a particular site. So but I'm just wondering, does Vastu talk about also materials use, or any type of materials that need to be used for any specific place, or does it talk about mutual shading, or like you talked about surrounding structures, that they affect one another? I'm sure at that time also there was some thought about it, or is nothing mentioned about such a thing like mutual shading, or different. I mean, even in the older times, we never had straight facades as we have now. So, are these things sort of discussed in the Vastu Shastra principles?
So, to answer this question, no, they are not directly discussed. But even in Vastu Shastra, when I was going through different books, there was a class-based distinction. Like there was Brahmin, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, and their houses were given specific locations. Now, what happens is I mean, this is again my derivation out of what I read, that in those times, even their occupations were defined. So it was very obvious that certain people are located in certain locations and the other people are located in the other locations. Again, with respect to materials, no, there is no direct indication of materials, but I think the concepts were very straightforward. But when we apply it, we have to make a sense of the materials used then versus the materials used now, the context then, most importantly the density then. I mean, we didn't look at high rises thousands of years ago. We were just looking at probably a ground or maximum ground plus 2 structures. So I think we have to adopt the concept but apply it with specifications of today's context, and that is very important. One more thing I would like to just point out is that uh, the most time consuming part of my research was to understand which books to read. And that was where a major roadblock was also seen. So there are many books which are derivations of that specific author or his idea about Vastu Shastra. So if we look at different books says different things. The most important thing is you get a hold on the original text. And also in original text you don't have a straightforward chapter which says that this is to be done this way. There is a lot of it's there in bits and parts. So you have to try to accumulate all those bits and parts and then understand why that particular thing was said in that context, and then see how much is it applicable in today's scenario. So it is very important to select your literature appropriately.
So, I think that one of the important things you mentioned here is about the activities. So, like you said, there were different caste systems, and that particular thing was considered, that the houses of so and so would be here, and so on and so forth. So, I think in today's also architecture principles, environmental architecture principles, the activities of the people is important to consider, whether it is, even if it is commercial spaces or it is residential spaces. Today's patterns are totally different from earlier times. Even I was just looking at a village design recently, and we were trying to say that the cooling energy consumption of these villages is so low, mainly because most of the time during the day they spend outdoors in the fields working, and then they use the house for probably sleeping in the night, and mainly the kitchen is used. So there are some spaces which become really, really important, and how they are placed, etc., etc., becomes important in that context. So I think from even in today's era, we need to probably review how people's patterns are, Like most of the people are out even in the day to day. They don't use their residential. So residential housing design should probably be completely different from commercial, because commercial is only used during the day, most of them at least. And so there are different purposes that they serve. So this is very interesting. But again, coming back to the one point you mentioned about literature, that you had a difficulty in choosing what literature to read, and I'm sure this is a big concern and a big dilemma. But I'm sure that the originals were all in Sanskrit. Am I correct about that?
Yes, they are in Sanskrit, and they are the seeds of Vastu Shastra is basically seen in, as I specified earlier, in Sthapatya Veda, which is a part of Atharva Veda. But it's very
Atharva.
difficult to get into that. But there are several literatures like Maya Mata and Mansara, which directly give you an overview from that text without any reasoning, or there's no reasoning specified that this is in the north because of this. That is left upon the author to decide. So that is where there is no biased review of the author. It is just directly giving you what the Shastras said, and it's just specified as it is. So it was a good thing to look into those books first and then have your own derivations about.
So Ranjini, did you actually read any of those Sanskrit texts?
I started reading with Samarangna Sutradhar, but then that was more on the town planning view. And also you have these shlokas and then the text which convert these shlokas. But and after a point of time, I think I had to boil down to residential architecture. So then again, I went back to
Focus.
Maya Mata and Mansara, yes. And that was done by my guide. So I really thank her for that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have completed my dissertation.
Good evening, ma'am. Can I put up my question over the chat?
Yes.
Rather than, ma'am, I'm also doing dissertation on Vastu Shastra only. So I wanted to ask something. The parameters which ma'am have taken while comparing it with the environmental architecture, the only sun radiation and heat gain is considered for the parameters which are compared. Why is it that those intangible parameters which Vastu talk about, like geothermal stress, are not? Are those not that relevant? Because only the physical parameters are being watched over by both environmental assessment, architecture, and Vastu Shastra. Vastu Shastra has a lot more to offer. As she said, Samrangan Sutradhar has everything related to form, shape, and Tantra Vidya also. So why is it that is that part not relevant anymore?
Yeah, so to answer that question, definitely it is relevant. It's not that it's not relevant, but I think when one is doing a dissertation, somewhere down the line, if you have to get into a detailed study of aspects, then you have to boil down to certain aspects. That's what I said, that my rating system was limited to the physical parameters. There are many more things which can be assessed, and the rating scales can be elaborated for the intangible ones. Then the problem with the intangible ones was that you need to understand how will you assess it or give it a figurative value to say that this is better than that. So
Yes, ma'am.
that was a
We have
yeah.
we have some experimentations which are already being performed by doctors which are doing work on magnetic field lines. Those are terming it as geothermal stresses.
Right.
So the observation is like that those people who are living inside the field lines are less vulnerable to the diseases, and those who are living in the habitable spaces which are being provided on the intersection of the or the conjunction of the joints are having various kind of diseases like cancer. So
Yeah.
now I wanted to ask you if I can find something like we have in Griha and everything. We have latitudes, and on the basis of that, we are latitudes and sunpart diagram. We are checking the envelope of the building. But can we relate it to the geographical location somehow in Vastu Shastra? I'm not able to find it. I mean, I know there are different. Mansara is different for Bhrigu Samhita is different and there are different Vastu on different location, but I'm not able to find a text that can relate the whole Indian continent to that.
Yeah.
Can you add something on that?
Yeah. First of all, I would like to talk on the magnetic field where you said that, locating or being located in a certain magnetic field has more pros and other areas had more cons. Now, again, to that, there's one more question that how close, I mean, if you are on the ground floor versus you are on the 50th floor, will that still have the same effect or will the effect change? So there is a lot more depth which one has to get into that. To be very honest, in this particular dissertation, the magnetic field was not considered and that was specified as a delimitation because to figure out everything we had to, get into some other direction altogether. That was the first point. The second point, yes, all the texts are majorly from the South Indian origin. Even in North India, it was said that there were texts available, but then they were destroyed. So, I'm not sure about the whole Indian continent and the geography, whether the texts are available or not. But then it's very clear, or the main aspect of the dissertation was to first understand even one particular text. If it says something, what is the reason behind that, and then take forward that reason and then analyze that further. I mean, that was why the whole thing of stressing upon the methodology was to give you an overview of how one parameter was analyzed and how I had reasoned it. Now, there can be another research which could probably contradict this. So it's not like an established rule which says that, oh, this is correct or this is wrong. We have to understand why it was said at that time and now how am I looking at it or how are you looking at it. So
Yeah, I think that thanks Rishabh for asking the questions, and thanks Ranjini for taking them. But I think that yes, in a research one has to delimit yourself given the time frame that one has for a master's dissertation. So obviously that's
Yes, ma'am, I
reason
understand.
that that's one of the reasons that Ranjini chose those specific areas which can be tangibly assessed in the given time frame. So I think I'll move on to some of the questions. There are lots here, but some of the questions which are probably easy and straightforward. Quite a
Thank you,
few which
ma'am.
you can
Thank
take
you for
on
your time.
later on. Thanks, Rishabh. The question is there are a lot of Vastu Shastra principles in architecture talk about orientation and zoning, and there are remedies suggested by religious pundits. The question is whether these remedies really mean in real life, whether they have relevance in real life. Are they mentioned anywhere in the readings? So that is the important question. Did you find in your readings the sort of mention about the remedies that are being now suggested mostly in Vastu Shastra by the Pandits, etc.? Do you see that kind of thing in the original texts or in the earlier texts that you read?
yeah. So to answer this question, no, they were not specified as remedies. But to give you an example, like when I was reading Maya Mata book, there was a chapter on Bhumi Pujan. So every building construction before it starts, you locate a location and then you put your first brick and you do a puja on it, which is a religious aspect. Now this is just a derivation from that particular location for say northeast becomes so sacred that you consider that as a temple location and then start locating your remedial measures there. So I think the remedies which are directly used as, okay, if your toilet is in your northeast, so it's a very bad location, so let us just put this stone here and then it's a remedial solution. I don't think that it works that way. Whatever is specified in the text is the all, I mean, before starting the construction you do a puja. It's just to have a good aura and then start things, and then how things are taken up ahead. So I don't think that you can have direct remedies to things like that. And first of all, you have to look at the whole concept itself in a different way. I mean, you cannot just say that my toilet is in the northeast so it's bad. Probably it's not even in the northeast. Your exposure would be different, I mean, as I specified earlier.
There's a question here from Robin Dwivedi which says, for high-rise housing project, how can we follow Vastu Shastra as equality with maximum number of dwelling units? I think similar question was also asked by Sachin Vedak. about, how it would high density urban housing project. How should one understand Vastu Shastra and its application in the housing throughout the project?
I think this is a good question because this was the whole thing with which I started. Now, having worked for design consultancy firms and builders, the only thing that people look at is हम लोग का entrance east west पे होना चाहिए बस. That's all that they look at. But when we understand that when you have to go high rise and when you are living in an apartment, majorly all your windows are in one direction. So we have to understand whether we can actually even have 8 orientations which Vastu says. But still, in that case, people take up the flat plan and then they divide it into 8 parts and say this is your 8 zones. But the point which I was wanting to make through these dissertation is that when you are in an apartment structure, you don't have 8 zones or 8 orientation first of all in your hand. You just have one orientation. For example, if you have a southwestern orientation, when you look at Vastu text, southwest is considered to be very bad. That is the notion of people who have written books after reading literature that southwest is bad. So you don't have your kitchen there, you don't have your living room there. But then when you're living in a flat and your southwestern wall is the only exposed wall to external facade, then all your rooms are basically in the southwest orientation. So the best way to deal with it would be looking at your shading devices, looking at how you can control your wind, how you can control your heat gains. And precisely that is where I'm coming from, that in Vastu also we are looking at sunlight and heat gain. And we have to look at similar concept and then design the apartment and design your shading devices so that it is comfortable. And most importantly, understand how the user is going to use the apartment in during different times of the day.
So, so basically, you have to adapt, look at the current situation. And you said that, it doesn't make sense these days because the zones are no longer available in apartments. You have just one orientation to you, and not all the orientations as it used to be in earlier times. And what is probably north or east that should be good for you is probably somebody else's toilet or something is placed right in front of you, but you will be still making your living room on that side as per the so-called principles. So you will need to obviously reassess and look at what are the things and why it was said that way, and therefore reassess yourself in this situation and do the most, because we can't help ourselves in urban areas. We do need high rise buildings and we do need to make such kind of dwellings.
Yes.
I think there are some questions, but not. I think high-rise building is the main question that is coming in most. It's common to all of them. That is I think in urban settings, this aspect is probably one has to relook at, not directly impose Vastu Shastra principles, and look at the environmental aspects as well, what is in the surroundings, some buildings and the shade and shadow, all that comes into play. But let me ask you about the intangibles. Did you read in your in your readings of the original or maybe the derivations of Vastu Shastra, did you find any thing such as maybe not geothermal stress, I'm not sure if that was mentioned, but anything else related to how one person feels in a certain place or an environment?
Yes,
Is there something related to that?
yes, there is a mention of energies, the vibrancy of positive energies and negative energies being there. That is precisely why we can see in today's context, if you call a Vastu consultant, two main things that a person will carry is a north compass and a pendulum. And then if the pendulum rotates, circulates or moves forward or backward, there is a certain mention of energies of being positive and negative. Yes, I did not get into it, but energy is definitely specified in the literatures.
There is a question here. I don't know whether you can answer this, but it says, could you please suggest the position of water bodies in case of bungalows like swimming pools, fountains, etc.? I would say that maybe you can just relate it. Is there any any mention of water bodies in the original text?
Yes, I mean in the text, not specific to water bodies, but then rivers, if they are in your northeast and all is good. But while I was doing my literature review, I went through the book written by architect Shashikala Anand. Again, she is a lot into Vastu Shastra and she's done a lot of studies and she's written books on it. So, specific to water bodies, I think I have a very good example where she had given a case study in her practice where there was a well that was redundant. I mean, it was there in the north of the plot of a person's bungalow. And then some Vastu consultant told him that, you know, you put it in your northeast. So the well was shut in the north, and the northeast well was dug in the northeast. And after a few days, the person realized that the water from the northeast well is salty. So when architect Shashikala Anand had intervened in it, she realized that the adjoining plot's septic tank was, just besides the well of the northeast zone of that particular bungalow. And then again, that person was made to, revive the well that was shut. So to, I mean, sum it up or in a nutshell, water bodies should be placed based on the geography. I mean, the best suitable slope that you get is the best suitable location for your water body. And also, the benefits that you can take is, for example, if you are in a hot and dry climate and your wind direction is from the northwest, if you locate your water body in the northwest, you will, naturally humidify your air. And then if your window is opening in that direction, you will get in cool air instead of getting in hot and dry air. So I think that is the way now I would look at placing the water bodies in any of the design.
Does water also is also related to some kind of energy?
uh, I have not, frankly speaking, not dealt into the energy, so hence I would really not like to just throw away a comment on it. But yes, it is one of the elements, and it definitely has an energy quotient to it.
I do know that there are lots of houses and dwellings in Rajasthan where either part of the front of the house or even below the house, and I've seen in Vadodara, I have seen just below the house there is a tank, the storage for water. Of course, that is a very good harvesting, rainwater harvesting method. Or in many other traditional structures, I have seen there are water storage below the houses. So I'm just wondering as to whether there is some kind of energy related to water, because whenever you are in front of a lake or a river or something, there is definitely some kind of positive ions kind of energy. I remember from an earlier webinar that you definitely get positive ions. So I was just wondering if you have, there's a question here about trees and plants. Is there any mention related to trees and plants in the principles?
Yes, yes, there is an elaborate list which has been given in the text as to which tree should be in which orientation, and then there is a list of again common trees which can be planted in any direction, and there is a specified list given in the text. I think
uh,
whoever I asked that question, I can share the list with that particular person.
Yes, I think it's from Sarang Bhide, and he's on Zoom, so we can share the details with you. There's also a question from Mr. Shenoy about monsoon, whether there is does monsoon direction play any role in Vastu? Because monsoon is very specific to the Indian subcontinent. As you know, we get the southwest monsoon, and we also get the northeast retreating monsoon. So rains play a major role in different parts of our country. And do you see any mention of that in the principles?
There is no direct mention of monsoons per se, but if I have to relate it to, I mean, design principles, then I think I would combine it with the water. Again, in this case, water, what has been specified in the literature is specifically to a place where your water is accumulated, like, for example, your tank or your pond. It doesn't talk about rains specifically, but then I think it is an important factor which needs to be considered in the design as such also, like the direction of rain and wind together.
Yeah, I think India as a whole is a whole subcontinent is totally dependent on the southwest monsoon. And I'm sure that if it is Atharva Veda, must have surely some reference to this kind of major phenomenon. Now, I want to ask you a very broad question from which will test all the reading that you have done from so far. It says, how feasible is it to achieve best Vastu in a city like Mumbai?
First of all, are you looking at a bungalow design or are you looking at an
No, for the
apartment?
whole city, for the whole city. This
That
appears
is
to be
town planning. That is town planning.
town planning. So it is out of the purview of your readings.
Yes, yes, definitely.
So
No,
is there some part of Vastu Shastra which talks about town planning design?
yes, yes, there is. There is a broad, I mean, there is a very specific subject and book also which talks about town planning as a whole, as to where your, the major water bodies of the entire town be situated, where you're living, I mean, where your houses or dwellings, where your industries. There is uh, text available and you can go through. I mean, if anyone is interested, can definitely look at that aspect also. And there has been research also which has been done in these directions. I mean, I had just broadly looked at one or two of the research in Vastu Shastra which had dealt with the broader aspects of town.
Right. In our traditional or vernacular architecture, one of the common features across India is courtyards. It's like an open space, open to sky space in the center of the house, almost in the center, not everywhere in the center. So it's an openness, like a void. And I remember also that a lot of architects have spoken about it, and as a center point, as a bindu, and so on. So, did you find any reference to open spaces and void within the planning of a house in this?
Yes, every house had this central space which was open to sky, and then all the houses were designed around it. Uh, I mean, if I have to derive things out of it, then A being, if you have a courtyard, you are directly exposed to the space element of one of the Panch Mahabhutas. And secondly, once you have your courtyard, you're opening up that much of exposure to yourself, and hence you get the benefit of sunlight, you get the benefit of wind in that many, I mean, portions other than your outer periphery of the house as well. So courtyard on and all is thought of as a positive part, uh, because I mean, most importantly, it is allowing all the five elements to come into your house, and you have a more sort of a cross ventilated day lit house with an exposure to your sky. I mean, that's something which is a luxury right now in cities. But yes, I mean, it's an
We,
important part.
we, we possibly can't get a courtyard into our houses or into our apartments in Mumbai.
Not into our buildings as well. So even that is not
Not even,
happening.
yeah, you won't waste that much FSI for a courtyard. But I think this point that you mentioned, that it is the one point that brings in all the Pancha Mahabhutas into your house. I think that's very significant, because today we are starved of light, we are starved of ventilation. We don't get to even see outside sometimes because there's a building bang in front of you. So visually and everything, we are sort of disconnecting ourselves from nature. And I think this point about having a courtyard or an open space in the center, and sort of this connection to the sky, and open to the sky means that you are able to see the sky, is a very interesting point that is there, that exists in the planning and design of houses earlier. And we should definitely look at that as to how we can bring that back into our designs now. It's very difficult. There are lots of questions, but I don't know, there's something about architecture and landscape. Would you suggest something on architecture and landscape? I saw something earlier from missed that one question from Nimiti. And can you guide on the importance of 8 by 8 or 9 by 9 grid while planning residence?
So this is, I think, talking about the Manduka diagram. I had looked into it, but I think again somewhere just did not get into the detail of it, because again it was talking about your zone based approach, where you take up your house and then you divide it into so many grids, and then you locate your living room, bedrooms and kitchens, and so on. But in today's scenario, if I have to design an apartment, I do not have those many grids or those many orientations available. So after a point of time, I have not got into the details of Manduka diagram. It has definitely more to talk about, more than the Panch Mahabhutas. It has energies into it, and it also talks about the Vastu Purusha Mandala, who faces his head on the northeast and legs on the southwest side. But then yes, after a point of time, I stopped looking at the zone based approach, and then went ahead with the orientations, because I had taken Mumbai into consideration.
The site gradient location in a valley or on top of a hill or on a slope, would that make any difference? Sorry, I know that it is entirely out of your dissertation, but we are hoping that you are a Vastu Shastra expert now.
No, definitely that will make a difference, because again, I think when one is asking this question itself, it is very clear that you are in a different terrain, which is again in a different physical surrounding. So once you are on a hilltop, the wind, I mean, the quality of your wind, the quality of your sunlight changes. You have higher winds, and you have a valley below you. I mean, you can have different views to your houses below. So your design would also change accordingly. And when you're inside, I mean, when you're on the ground and not on the valley, you have your surrounding buildings. So it is very obvious that that makes a lot of difference. And this is exactly what I'm talking, that your context is very important, and your design must be very specific to your context.
Yeah, I think there are lots of very similar questions which we can share with you, Ranjani, and you can answer on a one-to-one basis. There are even some questions about whether you can give some Vastu Shastra consultancy based on this. But I think that what I really like is the effort that you put in the methodology of doing this, and the details that you went into in terms of calculations and so on, and comparing very objectively the environmental architecture principles of heat gain in a building today and versus Vastushastra principles. And some of the things that definitely we must learn from these and take in from these, but also not accept everything as was said. And probably it's far more important to read the original documents, because there are lots and lots of derivations and meanings derived from one after the other, which don't refer to the original. There are simplistic solutions being said, which are probably not even relevant now. So I think I want to sum this up today, that one is that the name Sthapatyas is something I really liked about. I think architects in India should call themselves Sthapatyas.
Apati.
Sthapatis. So I like that name. I mean, why should we call ourselves architects? Maybe we should change that. And the idea that you mentioned about having looking at our dwellings as a smaller version of the cosmos, and looking at the five Pancha Mahabhutas, and always considering all of this in the design and planning. And the two most important things you mentioned also about health and fortune. As you said, fortune we don't know, because it depends on many other things, including the stock market and the health and COVID and various other things. But health, yes, the dwelling can definitely affect the way you live healthily. So definitely all these aspects are very important. And it's a science which had a context, and therefore we need to look at that context. We cannot go beyond that context. So thank you so much, Ranjani, for sharing with us this little piece of your vast dissertation. I know it was a huge dissertation work. Also thanks to Nidhi, who guided you on this. And thanks all the participants also. And now I think I will hand over to Prajakta for taking this further. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for an interesting research, Ranjani. Thank you, Roshni ma'am. Our next webinar will be conducted on waste management in cities on 15th of August at 4 p.m. Do share this with all your near and dear ones. Tune in to our Instagram and Facebook page for further updates. The link to join our pages have been posted in the chat window right away. Also, subscribe to our YouTube page and do check our past webinars. We would also be soon announcing our short certificate courses, so stay tuned. You'll find our updates coming up on our Instagram page, on our Facebook page. And thank you all for joining today. Take care and stay safe. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.